Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I am joined by the wonderful Tenya Eickenberg, and we are going to be talking about how energy healing and self-care work together. I've been looking forward to this topic because it's very important, especially with the changing of times that we are having right now. And so many people are waking up and healing and working on themselves. So thank you so much, Tina, for being here and for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share my knowledge.
I love that because I believe that when we talk about these topics, we are helping many, many people. I don't know how it was for you, but when I was going through my awakening, the first one, and everything that came with it, and the discovery that certain parts needed to be healed, and all of that, there was not a lot out there that was actually helpful. I had to find everything myself, piece everything together myself, and that is why I love having these types of conversations because there are so many people out there that just could really use some insight and some knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I was the same way when I was, um, you know, when I got to the point where I could spend that time on my healing, I was kind of like stuck in traditional means, and traditional means just were not working.
No. No, that's what I encountered as well. So my journey of self-discovery started with a massive burnout, and I lost everything in that time. I lost my boyfriend of 7 years, of whom I thought I was going to marry, and he was going to be the dad of my children. So that never happened. I lost my house, my family, my job, and most of my friends. So it was a really, really dark time, and um, there wasn't a lot out there that could actually help you move through this. And I had so many things happening, and I didn't know where to go or what to do. And my boss then sent me to a psychologist that did cognitive behavioral therapy with me, and it just didn't help at all. And she wanted me to have certain insight and certain knowledge. And I said, I know exactly what you want me to learn from this exercise. And she didn't believe me. So she said, sure, what do you think I want you to learn? And I said, well, this, and this. And she was like, oh, yeah. So I already know all of that. This is
Right,
not where my problem lies.
right, exactly. Yeah, it sounds very similar to my story. When my kids were when my twins graduated high school, and this was 2018. My husband and I have a phenomenal marriage. We met. It's so funny. He hired me for a position as a photographer for this local studio, and we started dating. And so within 6 months of him hiring me, we started dating and got pregnant.
No,
So happened very quickly.
yes.
That was almost 30 years ago. So we raised our kids, and in 2018, our oldest was graduating from college, our twins are graduating from high school, and we bought our forever home. We sold a house that we raised our kids in. And so there were a lot of changes going on during
Mm,
2018. And my anxiety and depression started to raise its hand again and be like, hey, you kind of pushed us away for so many years. Now that you have the time to devote to us, like you devoted all that time to your family, we'd like some attention.
yes.
And I just pushed him away
Hmm.
because we were moving into this community where we were going to be on the beach every day, hanging out with my best friend, and making new memories as a couple. um However, we moved in the winter time, and you don't go to the beach in the wintertime.
Not often, at least.
It was just cold and dreary. And so, you know, I still I didn't want to work on it. I was not in the headspace to deal with it.
Mhm.
And I pushed it away for a good year. Um, Started drinking again, started smoking again, and just started, enjoying myself because I didn't have any more responsibilities of having to take kids to school and
Mhm.
work and all that stuff. And by the end of 2019, I was like, you know what, something. I have to do something, because
Mhm.
I'd gotten to the point where I was either going to run my van into a telephone pole so I could get some time off,
Mhm.
or I was going to need to find some help somewhere else. And I decided not to run my vehicle into a telephone pole. Um,
Good.
but that's exactly where most people's thoughts go, is like, what can I do that would cause me to be able to take time off so that I can deal with this? Because we're so ingrained with not being able to ask for help or ask for time off. And then if we do ask for time off, it's usually unpaid unless you have vacation time and sick time.
Mm.
It's,
Yes.
you don't get paid when you take mental health days or anything like that. Um, and so I went the traditional routes because that was all I knew. At that time I was 42, 42, almost 43. But that's, I only knew medication, talk therapy. I had dealt a little bit in acupuncture. I knew about The Secret. So there's a little bit of that kind of stuff in my background. But for the
Mhm.
most part, it was, you have depression or anxiety, are you taking your medication? Right? That was the
Yes.
always the question that people would ask. Like, if you're having a bad day, well, did you take your medication? Are you on your meds? It was, jokes like that. And so I, and this was also right as COVID was starting to like come into our awareness, right? So this was like February, March time period of 2020, when I got a doctor, had to go online, met with a doctor that I had never met before. This was through my insurance. And it was a 15-minute appointment for
Mhm.
him to ask me, you know, did I ever feel like harming myself? Well, no, I'm not going to tell you that, because my perception, if I tell you, yes, I have, that you're now going to figure out where I live. You're going to call in, people who are going to come and talk to me. And I don't want anybody else to know about what's going on. My husband didn't even know how deeply ingrained or how deeply hurt I was feeling.
Mhm.
And so he gave me some medication, had it filled, found a talk therapist. And it's so funny that you brought up the cognitive behavioral therapy, because that was one thing that she suggested. And she was like, probably second or third session, she was like, here's an app for cognitive behavior therapy. She explained a little bit about what it was. And, just download the app and follow the app. And
Mhm.
I'm like, it's not what I was looking for.
That's easy. It's just pushing responsibility
Right.
from me away towards an app, and then do your thing, and I hope it helps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I went to, and to be fair, I did only go to 6 sessions of therapy. I was only on medication for 6 or 8 weeks. Um, but when I went back to the doctor to talk about how the medication was making me feel, they wanted to up the dosage.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to, I was feeling numb. I wasn't crying as much, but I wasn't happy either.
No, it
I was
takes away
just
everything. It takes away the bad, but also the good.
right. And it was at that point, and I had been down this road before. So it wasn't like I tried it once and I never tried it again. I had been on antidepressants 3 or 4 times throughout
Yeah.
my lifetime. I started probably when I was around 19 or 20,
Mhm.
right after my oldest daughter was born, was the first time I got on antidepressants, which is surprising to me because I grew up with a mom who was diagnosed with being bipolar when I
Mhm.
was 8 years old. And so you would think that, I probably would have been on something earlier than that, but I think I learned to carpment carp was it compartmentalized? Yeah.
Compartmentalize.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I learned how to push things away, how to push things to the side so that I
Yeah.
didn't have to deal with them. I learned to walk on eggshells out of my own safety.
Yeah, but it is a survival strategy, right? You probably
Right.
had to, because if you didn't, then everything that was going on with your mom would have broken you. I have also a trauma background, but then in this instance, or my instance with my dad, and you learn certain survival strategies to make it through that period. That
Yeah.
in that period really help you, but not necessarily help you after.
Right. Right. Well, I had a conversation with my mom one time. Um, and this was probably only about a year ago, maybe not even that. And I had to tell her, I was like, look, growing up, you took all the emotions in the house. Us kids didn't feel like we were allowed to have emotions. If we got mad, we didn't know what was going to happen if you got mad.
Yes.
Like we just learned that we couldn't have emotions. And
Hmm.
it's so funny because my brother has a completely different perspective on our growing up than
Yeah,
I do.
mine too.
And he's almost 2 years younger than me. So it's amazing how that 2 year difference.
Yes, mine is 2.5 years younger, but also a completely different view. And a part of it is because I protected him from my
Right,
dad until I was forced out of the house. So we are no longer speaking because he resents me for having gone off and happily lived my life, which is also not what was happening. And then
right,
he had to deal with an abusive dad. And I thought, well, but the first 16 years of your life, I dealt with him.
right. Yeah, I can't say that I can't say that I protected my brother. I just think that my mom grew up a little bit with each kid.
That's also a
Um,
possibility, yeah.
you know, she had when she married my dad, he had two kids already.
Hmm.
So when I came into the world, I was kind of like her third, but she had never been a mom of a 5 and a 4 year old before, and all, you know, she got married and all of a sudden she was a parent of a 4 and 5 year old. She was a stepmom and she had never been a parent before. So not only was she learning to be a parent of, you know,
5 years.
toddlers, right, 4 and 5 year olds, she was then also learning how to be a new mom to her own baby.
Hmm.
And, you know, I've learned over the years that that really impacted my older siblings as well.
Hmm.
Um, but once my older siblings moved out, my mom did seem to, I say, get better. She became calmer. She became less intrusive and in that kind of sense.
Volatile, maybe also.
Huh?
Less volatile, maybe also.
Yes. Yeah. Um, and you know, but I also learned to walk on eggshells because
Yes.
of how her relationship was with my older siblings.
Yeah, I learned the same thing because you never knew what would set my dad off,
Right,
and it causes anger. And he was a very big man with very big hands, and
yep,
everything very big and very aggressive. And you didn't want to trigger that. So I
yeah,
did it. Yeah.
yeah. And you know, I love my parents. They did the best job that they knew how with the knowledge that they had, and I absolutely am grateful for the help that I had from my mom when I first became a mom.
Mm.
It wasn't until I moved to another city, moved an hour away from my mom, and my oldest started to become a preteen teenager, that I started to really remember and notice a lot of the things that I grew up with, which is so funny because, you know, a lot of people who go through traumatic events in childhood, you know, they tend to, I guess it's probably like half and half. You know, half the time you really just disassociate yourself from your family. You don't talk to them anymore. You know, you just don't have that in your life. But the other half kind of forgets like what happened, and you continue to have a happy and comforting sometimes life with your family, with your parents, after you move out, after you start a family, but things don't start to come up until, you know, a few years later. And
Mm.
that's how mine was. I didn't really start to see what I had grown up with until my oldest started to become a preteen and an adult and started to come to me and say, hey, this is what's happening when I stay the night at Nanny's. This is what's happening. She's putting you down. She's putting, your other siblings down. It, and it was like my mom was trying to relive having another child and trying to keep, get that child to like her more than everybody else. And I don't blame my mom for trying to do that, because that is part of her illness.
Yes, and I'm very glad that you brought this up, and also what you said before, because that's also the way I look at it, right? It's very easy to become resentful and angry and blame everything on your parents. And the Western society helps in that, because when you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, 9 out of 10 times they dig in your past, what your parents did, and then solve it, or lay the blame there. So it's a very logical thing to do. But in the end, I think if you can see it this way, but you were also sharing that you can see my parents are also the product of their upbringing. They are the
Exactly.
product of their parents, and their parents are also the product of their parents. And you can see how things are being passed down from generation to generation. And you can see that with the knowledge they had at the time, with the things that were available to them at the time, and the help that they had or had not had in that moment, they did the best they could under the circumstances. Did that mean that you were not heard? No. Did that mean that you needed something else? Probably. But that also means that they did the best they could.
Right. Yeah. And just like, I'm doing the best I can with my kids. And I'm sure that there is going to come a time when my kids are going to either come to me and be open and say, hey, you did this when we were kids. It hurt me. I'm sorry. I am so sorry, because I only knew what I knew.
That's it, right? You only knew what you knew. And I think basically people are good. People don't want to hurt other people.
Yeah.
And there's this saying, hurt people hurt people. And I think that that is true. When you've been hurt, when you've been traumatized, when you have gone through certain things, it damages you in a certain way. And if you don't take responsibility for that, and you don't try to heal that, and you don't try to let go of the energy and resolve all of that, then it's very easy, and also very probable, that you will pass it down to your children.
Mhm.
That's why it's so important for people to really get to know themselves, the ins and outs of what makes them them, and start looking at things that are behaviors that are either undesirable or unwanted, or survival strategies, or whatever is going on that makes you act or say things or do certain things that you don't really want to be acting, saying, or doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I heard someone once say that, what happens to us in our childhood is not our fault, but
Mhm.
healing from it is our responsibility.
Exactly.
And it's
Yes.
also our responsibility to apologize for the hurt that we've caused, even if we don't believe that we caused it, because
Yes.
their perception of what happened is different than our perception of what happened.
Yes. Yes. That is a lesson I learned a long time ago. We call it the truth, but there is no the truth.
Right.
You
Right.
have your truth, I have my truth, somebody else is their truth, and the real truth is probably somewhere in the middle. uh,
Right. 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 And
I,
it's not up to us. We're not responsible for how other people perceive us.
no, that's another thing that really opened my eyes, is what other people think of you is none of your business.
No, it's not.
And
It's
that
our
is something.
ego feels like it's our business.
Yes, but we tend to take things personal, and that's because
Yeah.
we are hurt. If you take the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the pain body. The pain body is a collection of things that have happened to you,
Mhm.
movies, little movies of trauma, of
Yeah.
hurts, of being talked down to. All of the negative things, and they sort of connect. They become the pain body. He calls it the pain body,
Yep.
and because we work with pattern recognition and autopilot programs, because it's way too much to have to think about how do I walk, lifting leg, putting it forward, putting it down, shifting weight, lifting leg, putting it forward, putting it down, shifting weight, right? That's so we do a lot of things on autopilot. And this
Yeah.
also happens with traumatic things, or things that happen, situations that happen, things that are being said. We take it in, we compare it to things in our pain body. And if we think, oh, it's similar to that situation, then we immediately feel the same hurts. We have the same thoughts. We
Yeah.
probably take the same actions. It's like that autopilot program that keeps running. And that's the thing that we're actually needing to dismantle if we don't want to let the outside world influence our inside world in a way that we don't want.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so I got away from, I was like, I'm not going to take any more medication.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped going to talk therapy. And I was sitting at my desk and I was like, God, universe, Lord, whoever's listening, internet gods, I don't care. Somebody find me something that is going to get rid of this anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want to keep suffering with it. I didn't want to just to keep trying to survive with it.
Who in their right mind would, right?
Right. Well, a lot of people do. A lot of
And
people just
they're not
manage.
conscious of it.
Yeah.
They are not aware of what is happening, and they just go through the motions of life.
Yeah.
They're not really living. They're just going through the motions and auto reacting to things, auto responding to things, staying stuck in their hurt, being sort of, you can call it the victim, but I think it's more the slave of your pain body.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I did a Google search for holistic emotional healing.
Mm,
And because I didn't want to take any supplements, I didn't want to ingest anything. And this modality called the emotion code came
yeah,
up.
I work with
And
it
I
as
was
well.
like, okay. So I started researching more, and it was a modality of using muscle testing or kinesiology to find trapped emotions and then releasing them with a refrigerator magnet. I was like, okay, all right. Did a little bit more research. I was like, you know what? What do I have to lose but a couple $100 having a session with a practitioner? Because again, I'm not ingesting anything and it's a refrigerator magnet. Like, and then it was like, how is this going to work over the phone? Because this was COVID. Nobody was doing these things in person, and there was nobody in my area who was doing the emotion code. And so I had a session with a practitioner, and afterwards I felt so much lighter. It was like a huge weight was lifted off of my shoulders. And I waited a couple days and I started to feel the anxiety and depression kind of creep back in. I was like, oh, this doesn't work. Because at that point, my belief was that energy healing, I only had to have one session and whatever I was dealing with would be gone.
Mhm,
That was the belief that I had. And so I didn't think this worked, but I kept feeling the nudge to try it again.
mhm.
So I had a session with a different practitioner. I was like, maybe it's the practitioner. Maybe she wasn't very good.
It's the
Which is
mind, right?
right, exactly. My mind was like, I have to blame somebody else.
Mhm,
And so I had a session with someone else, and she kind of incorporated another modality with it. And afterwards, I felt lighter, and it lasted a little bit longer. And then it started coming back. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on here? Because I felt better and then I started to feel bad again. So got into Facebook groups on the emotion code and realized that, there could be lots of layers to
yeah.
why I have this anxiety and depression. And then I learned like you have to separate them and work on different symptoms for each one. And it was just a whole lot of like stuff coming at me in what this energy healing was.
Mhm,
And because it was COVID, Discover Healing was doing $97 webinars instead of doing in conference, which I would have to pay, a flight, hotel, the conference fee. So it was like $97. I can do that. So I signed up for the webinar. And by the end of the webinar, I decided to sign up for my certification just to heal myself.
mhm,
I was like, this is my answer. This is what I need. And so within a month, I was certified with the emotion code. Within a month after that, I was certified in the body code. And then a month after that, I was certified in a modality called the easy entity release.
mhm,
And within 4 months of learning what the emotion code was, I had healed my anxiety and depression about 80%.
That is
Just
amazing.
just with the energy work, and really that was it. I
Hmm.
hadn't really started diving into the self-care aspect yet,
Hmm.
because it hadn't occurred to me that that's what was missing from being 100% healed, and what I say as being clean of anxiety and depression.
Hmm.
Because by the time I learned to add meditation in, journaling, the Four Agreements became my Bible. I learned how to shift my mindset, set boundaries, um, which was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was to set boundaries with my parents, with my mom especially.
Yes.
100% healed within 6 months. And if it wasn't for starting the self-care, I think I still would have been struggling to heal it 100% with the energy healing.
For sure, it's always a combination, and that's also how I learned all my modalities. So I started with Reiki, and I did soul body fusion, reconnection. I did also the emotion code, the body code, access bars,
Yep.
and EFT, emotional freedom technique. So all of these things I learned of all of the modalities actually that I use on people to help people. I learned because I wanted to heal myself,
Yeah.
and certain things heal certain things, but for other things other modalities are more effective. So it was like this search to find the answers, to find the things that you that help you. Because if you constantly have to go somewhere, it also costs a lot of money, and it also depends, I think, on your own journey, right? If you are someone who has a calling of helping other people, then you
Mhm.
will want to learn these things for yourself because it just interests you. But
Yeah.
just with healing alone, you're not there, because if you continue to let everybody walk all over you because you don't have any boundaries, then
Right.
you keep on getting traumatized over and over again. So then the work never stops. And if you don't learn how to protect yourself, how to love yourself first and then everybody else, because you cannot pour from an empty cup and you need to be there for yourself, then you're never going to be completely 100% whole.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it was at that point, and I had never intended on starting a business to help other people until I realized that my anxiety and depression was 100% gone.
Mhm.
And what was so interesting to me as well is that even though the feelings of the anxiety and depression were gone, I mean, I could sit on my couch and I would just start to smile. And my husband would be like, what are you smiling at? I was like, nothing. I'm just happy. But I was still smoking, I was still drinking, I was still eating unhealthy. So those things were not attached to my anxiety and depression.
No.
They were attached to something completely different. And for years, I was told that because I had smoked and quit and then I started again, but for those years before, I was always told that you're smoking because of, your mental health. You're doing it for your mental health, or you're drinking to cover up your mental health. And it
Mhm.
had nothing to do with my anxiety and depression. And so that took me down a whole nother road of healing,
Yes.
um, to figure out, why was I drinking? Why was I smoking? Why was I eating unhealthy? All those things.
Mhm.
Um, but it, this energy healing and self-care literally saved my life.
Mhm. I
I say, people like to say, oh, I didn't run into that tree because I wanted to be here for my kids. Of course, I want to be here for my kids. But when you're in the depths of depression and anxiety, and I had high functioning anxiety and depression, which means nobody knew how bad I felt.
how bad it really was.
Nobody knew, you see the pictures of Robin Williams smiling and joking. He had depression because of the illness that he was diagnosed with.
That
And,
happened.
you know,
I did it with one of my best friends. We did karaoke on Thursday and he killed himself on Saturday. And
yeah,
we had so much fun on Thursday. I never knew that he was depressed to the level of committing suicide.
no, nobody knows, because there's two things. Is one, nobody knows how to tell somebody that they don't want to be here anymore, how bad they're feeling. But not only that, the person that they may tell has no idea what to do. Because we've all been taught to push down our feelings, to not deal with them, to not
Not talk about it
not
also.
talk about them.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn to have those conversations. I'm still learning how to have those conversations.
Mhm.
If people come to me and tell me that they feel like hurting themselves, I still have to figure out how to have those conversations.
I have a couple of clients who got had children because their husband really wanted children and they didn't really want to have children, but it was important to their husband, so they thought, oh yeah, I'm okay. And they are now regretting being a mom, and they're tied up in knots on the inside. But because how can you be a mom and say, I wish I never had my children?
Yeah.
That's just unthinkable for many people, and also undiscussable with most other people, because there's this instant judgment and this instant condemnation when
Mhm.
you want to say things like that, or when you feel things like that. So
Right.
instead of talking about it with someone, or getting help for thoughts or things like that, we suffer in silence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it should absolutely be a conversation that somebody should be able to have and
Yeah.
help and have somebody help them work through where that's coming from. Because once you start to work through where a belief is coming from, you may start to realize that it's really not even your belief.
Yes.
And all this time you're believing, for instance, you're someone who believes that they never wanted kids in the first place. Well, they may take a look at that belief and see, oh, well, you know what? I did have someone tell me once that I should never have kids because I would treat them poorly or something like that. Or maybe they were rebellious and their mom said, you know what? Wait until you have kids just like you.
Mhm. Yes, all
And
these
then they're like,
little remarks, right, that are not
yeah,
even said with malice, but that are just
right.
said, and we never know the impact of those things later on. Sometimes they don't have any impact, sometimes they have huge impact.
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes you don't even realize on a conscious level that you're holding on to those things.
Yes.
And if I've learned anything, any kind of energy can cause any kind of reaction. When we try to put logic to it, that's when that doubt of does this really work start to creep in.
Yes.
Because you can have an emotion of disdain from age 12 cause you to, push someone away in a relationship.
Hmm.
You
Yes.
know, it's not always logical.
Most of the time I think it's not logical, and that's also why we cannot really reach it with logical therapy.
Right.
Therapy that uses the mind, and because a lot of things, so one of the things that really blocked me, and that was the thing that took the longest to actually discover, was something on the most deepest subconscious level of your subconsciousness. It was, we call it a ghost cluster, so there are no conscious connections to it, and it was a trauma that happened to me when I wasn't even born. It's a trauma that happened when I was still in uterus.
Yep.
And that is also something that we are only slowly discovering, that that is even possible, let alone discovering that that is what happened, or how to heal or release stuff like that. And so that's why I think these conversations are so important, because there can be so many causes for what's going on with you that might defy logic, or that are unfamiliar, unknown to you, but have a huge impact on your life.
In this you bringing that up tells me why cognitive behavioral therapy did not work for you the same way it didn't work for me, is because a lot of what happened to us was before we were cognitive of what was going on,
Yes.
right? In utero, for me, I had a lot of inherited energies from my parents that went back generations.
Yeah, I have that too. I
Yeah.
have a yacht in my astrology, and but basically means that I'm the designated shit shoveler of both my mom's and my dad's family. So I thought,
Yep.
yay me.
Yep. Why did we sign up for this?
And then they say you choose this life. I
Yeah.
struggled with that for a long time, because I thought, who would in their sane mind would ever choose the amount of suffering that I've gone through?
Yep.
You
Yep.
would never
I had
choose it.
Yeah, I had someone say, well, why would an aborted baby choose to come into a life just to be aborted? It's like, well, maybe that baby just came in to feel what it meant to be loved by a mother. And once it felt that love,
It's
it didn't
purposely
need it
done.
didn't
Yeah.
need to be around anymore.
Yes.
Again, trying to bring logic into the spiritual realm
It's
is not always the best thing to do,
no.
because a lot of times you can't make sense of it.
No. No.
But what made sense for me was pairing self-care with energy work,
Hmm.
because when I had a problem with journaling, I
Hmm.
realized that it was because my mom had read a letter that I had written to my sister when I was 12 or 13 years old. And she called me home from school and had a conversation with me about what was in that letter. So she broke my privacy. I had to do a session around journaling so that I could start journaling again and be okay with leaving my journal out. Hope, I knew that people weren't going to
Trusting,
read it.
because it's not just your privacy, it's also your trust.
Right, right. And I didn't have that trust. I really had a hard time writing down my thoughts.
Hmm.
Um, but this is where, again, that pairing of the energy healing, and because of energy healing, I was able to do the self-care.
Hmm.
I was able to do the meditation. I was able to set boundaries. I still had to learn what boundaries were. I still had to learn what consequences I was going to give if someone crossed my boundaries. That was all stuff I had to
What
do on
boundaries
a,
are. Yeah.
yeah, we still have to do the conscious work. We can't just do the energetic work, and we can't just do the mindset work.
No, it's all connected.
You Um, Mindset work does work. What what how learning and shifting how we behave, how we treat people, it absolutely works. When you pair it with energy healing, though, it's so much quicker. You
Hmm.
can get to where you want to be so much quicker because you're working on two different levels. And when you start to add in the physical aspect of it, so when you start working on your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, and your energetic bodies, when you start working on all five of those, and you can even throw the pain body in there too, because we can clear that as well.
Yes.
But when you really start focusing on those five pillars and working with each one of them, it's amazing how much you can thrive in the life that you already have,
Yes. Yes.
instead of looking at what you're lacking.
Yes, and that is, of course, a shift in mindset, looking at what you have, being grateful for what you have, as opposed to only noticing what's not there,
Yep.
what's lacking. But
Right.
I indeed, it's a combination of things. That's why I'm also a holistic healer or mentor or coach, or there's so many labels you can stick on
Yeah.
me. But the whole combining factor is that it's holistic, and that it's taking into account that everything is connected: your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit. Everything is connected with each other. And working on one thing is not enough if the root of that thing is in somewhere else and you don't address that part.
Right.
And it will never really be truly solved. So that's why it's so important to have these alternatives to regular healing.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, especially people like you and me, regular healing either does nothing or only scratches the surface.
Hmm. Yeah. You really have to, and you have to try different practitioners too. You
Yes,
know,
you need to find the one that you resonate with the most, that
yeah,
you can fully trust and open yourself up to. And that is also a very personal process.
it is. It is. But that's, I always tell people, if working with me isn't getting you results that you're looking for, then please go find someone else to work with, because I'm not in this as much as I love making money from this. I'm not in it for the money.
No, exactly.
I do have to survive, but I want people to heal.
Yes.
I want people to be happy. I think ultimately that is one of our lessons in coming into this human experience, is learning how to be happy with the life that we are learning from.
And that is also a major difference with the Western world, right? They are more than happy to have you on as a client for indefinite years and then earn a paycheck and have you come in weekly, monthly,
Yep.
bi-weekly, whatever your schedule is with your psychologist or psychiatrist. Well, I also work in getting people to a point where they can either heal themselves, balance themselves, or
Yep.
they don't need me anymore because they
Right.
have all the tools to be able to do it themselves.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I love our talk, Tenya, and I'm very happy that we're here. I can also imagine that you, listener, viewer out there, also loved our talk. So we would love to hear from you. It would be amazing if you could leave us a message in the comments, either share your biggest insight or maybe share your personal story, because it always helps talking about your personal story, not only for yourself, but also for other people in a similar situation that find comfort or solace in your story. So that would be amazing. But I can also imagine that you would like to know, well, where can I find Tenya? How can I connect with her? So where can people find you?
Designyourexistence.com and Design Your Existence on all platforms.
I love it. I will make sure that it's also included in the show notes of this episode. So if you are unsure of how to write it, then just find the show notes, the description of the video, and everything that Tenya just mentioned will be included in there. Then I just really want to thank you for this wonderful and really open-hearted conversation. I loved it, and I think it's going to be really valuable to lots of people.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You are most welcome. Thank you also for watching, for listening, for being a supporter of this channel. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Maybe hit also the notification bell so you will never miss another awesome interview like this one ever again. And I look forward to inspiring you with another beautiful guest in next week's episode. For today, I wish you another beautiful, beautiful day. And I love talking to you again soon.